Some tense scenes coming out of South Korea tonight. Protests and outrage after an unexpected declaration of martial law that saw commandos smashing their way into parliament that you see there. How it all came to a dramatic end. What just happened in South Korea is going to take a lot of time to process. A president almost out of the blue declaring martial law, accusing his opponents of colluding with North Korea. Troops scrambling, lawmakers rushing to try to put together a vote to stop it, and then the protests and the political pressure that brought it all to an end within 6 hours. Thousands of protesters calling for that president's resignation. And even though he hasn't resigned, he has called the military off. It was an extraordinary day of chaos for one of America's closest allies in Asia. Lots to unpack here, so let's go to Janice Mackey-Frayer, who's now in Beijing.
An extraordinary turn of events in South Korea, with President Yoon Suk-yeol agreeing to lift martial law, forced by an emergency vote in the middle of protests. In declaring martial law, Yoon said in a TV address he had no choice to safeguard constitutional order. It was basically a move against the government, citing what he called despicable pro-North Korean anti-state forces. He's been in a bitter standoff and political gridlock with opposition members since he was elected in 2022. The main opposition party immediately condemned the move as unconstitutional and defied the president with a vote to revoke martial law. Large crowds gathered outside the National Assembly building in Seoul. People were also inside the building, windows smashed, police all around it. There's still confusion about where things stand. Under the order, political activities would have been banned, protests prohibited, the media censored. But military officials have been told to pull forces back. The Biden administration is in contact with the South Korean government and is said to be monitoring the situation closely. But President Biden has not commented on the declaration of martial law itself. South Korea is a staunch ally of the United States. There are some 30,000 American troops stationed in the country to guard against North Korea. The political situation is still shaky. It's still unclear. And people in South Korea are stunned by what's been unfolding.
So shaky. Janice Mackey-Frayer, thank you. Now, all of that, invoking martial law, the military breaking into parliament, lawmakers striking it down, and the president just taking it all back. That happened, again, in just a few hours. So here's a breakdown of how that timeline looks.
북한 공산 세력의 위협으로부터 자유 대한민국을 수호하고 비상계엄을 선포합니다.
11 p.m. Tuesday, December 3rd, South Korea's President Yoon Suk-yeol comes on TV and declares martial law. Martial law puts the military in charge, and in this case, bans all political activities. And that change happened within minutes. Soldiers marching down to the parliament. Helicopters landing on the roof. The last time this happened was in 1979, when the country was under military dictatorship.
Martial law brought soldiers and tanks to Busan, South Korea, and anti-government violence ended. Almost 80 people had been injured, more than 1,300 arrested, and the whole country shaken.
This time around, the opposition party mobilized quickly. Here's their leader, live streaming himself climbing over the National Assembly walls to get inside the building.
국민 여러분, 국회로 와주십시오. 무너지는 민주주의, 여러분이 함께 나서 지켜주십시오.
And the people came, and so did the police. Then the military showed up. And a little after 1 in the morning, a majority of Parliament voted to lift the declaration of martial law. One by one, police and soldiers started filing out, but things weren't over yet. Roughly 6 hours after the president declared martial law, he officially backed down.
철수시켰습니다. 바로 국무회의를 통해 국회의 요구를 수용하여 계엄을 해제할 것입니다.
And just like that, it was over. Joining us now is Marcus Garlaskas with the Atlantic Council. Marcus, thanks so much for being with us tonight. This whole thing went down around 11 p.m., if I understand correctly, got voted against around 1 a.m., then officially got revoked a few hours later. Like, some people were probably asleep when all of this went down, and then I can't imagine this is not going to have, like, the most massive repercussions within that country, people waking up to the news that everything's different now.
Absolutely. Thanks for this opportunity. It's interesting. I actually talked to a colleague today who got a call from his parents actually asking what was going on because they didn't have a sense themselves on the ground of what was really happening.
And what is the whole North Korea connection here? Is there any, or is this just an odd power play?
Well, first of all, it's important to keep in mind that one of the justifications that President Yoon used for imposing martial law, and one of the reasons why martial law exists in South Korea as an option, is because of the ever-present threat from North Korea. Just like this missile launcher you see in the background looming behind me. So there's always going to be a North Korea factor in any sort of political issue that happens in South Korea. Even if North Korea isn't directly involved, North Korea will be invoked as an issue.
And I mean, are there any telltale signs that North Korea was involved here?
No, I don't think there's any clear evidence of North Korean involvement. And if anything, I would expect the North Koreans here are sitting back and watching, as they do often when South Korea has these internal moments of political turmoil, looking for opportunity, but not necessarily acting strongly in a way that would unify South Koreans to focus on North Korea as an outside threat.
Do you see the calls for resignation growing louder in the next coming weeks?
Absolutely. I mean, it's clear that even Yoon's own party, the People's Power Party, the conservatives in South Korea have turned against him. And the head of that party actually really came out against Yoon's actions. And so I see that there was going to be calls from across the political spectrum for him to resign.
And finally, I mean, commandos landing on the roof. We saw those skirmishes there. The images are so dramatic. Did it seem like the entire military fell behind the president here, or were there any lines drawn? What happened?
Well, the military in South Korea is definitely used to following the orders of civil authorities, and so you weren't seeing the military actively defying the orders of the president. But at the same time, you didn't see them, from what I could tell, moving to enthusiastically carry out these orders for martial law. And certainly, there was not a willingness to engage in extreme violence or to really aggressively carry out these martial law orders. And so I think you see a mature South Korean military here, one that is used to taking orders from a civilian authority, but one that's also very careful in how it interacts with the public, recognizing this history of military dictatorship that South Korea had before transitioning to an elected democracy.
Yeah, what a moment in history. Marcus Garlauskas, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you.
And President-elect Trump is trying to get another legal case tossed out. This time it is the hush money indictment in New York, and that's less than 2 weeks after a judge indefinitely postponed that sentencing. Well, today, Trump's lawyers moved to dismiss the case entirely, and they're citing President Biden's pardon of his son Hunter as the reason why. They argued that the 34 felony counts Trump was charged with is, quote, precisely the type of political theater that Biden criticized, and they added that, as President Biden put it yesterday, enough is enough. Let's bring in Catherine Christian. She's an NBC News legal analyst and former assistant DA in Manhattan. Catherine, thanks for being with us. Trump's team using Biden's pardon like this. What do you make of this?
Well, it was a gift to them because their motion was due yesterday, December 2nd, and just this weekend, President pardoned his son. So, of course, they were going to add that to their motion. Look, they're going to say Hunter Biden was found guilty by a jury, just like President Trump, and now his conviction has basically been erased. I don't think Judge Merchan is going to really care about that because, quite frankly, President, pardoned his own son, and that's probably the main reason why Hunter Biden was pardoned, because his father was the president. I think what this motion, and in New York, they call it a Clayton motion, a motion to dismiss an interest in justice. I do not see Judge Merchan granting it. For one reason, the Trump lawyers piled in a whole lot of very personal, gratuitous attacks against the judge and the prosecution team. They accused the prosecutors of unethical conduct, of leaking grand jury information, of basically suborning perjury, meaning they knew that Michael Cohen was lying. They're saying that he lied on the stand, and the prosecutors knew that. They brought up again that Judge Merchan's adult daughter, who does not live with him, made him have a conflict of interest and should not have handled the case. So they put all of that extra factual allegations, which are really, choosing a prosecutor of unethical conduct is one of the worst things you can do. And that's basically what they're holding, hoping that Judge Merchan will dismiss this. And I should just say, under New York law, this motion, which is called the Clayton motion, is rarely granted. It's unusual for a judge to dismiss a case after it's already been indicted, particularly after a jury has already found the defendant guilty.
And the key word there, under New York law. Look, this is one of those things where people at home are like, okay, I know what guilty and I know what innocent means. I know what right is, and I kind of know what wrong is. And like, I've got this compass. But here we're talking a lot about jurisdiction, too, and especially when it comes to pardons. I know that this is a state issue, but is there any way that Trump could just pardon himself next month and it sticks?
No, a president can only pardon someone for federal crimes. So he can't pardon anyone for a state crime. So he can't pardon himself for the Georgia case or the New York case. Now, the two federal indictments have been dismissed. The January 6th indictment has been dismissed, and the classified indictment was already dismissed by Judge Cannon. And then the special counsel withdrew President-elect Trump from that appeal. So there will be no pardon on this case because it's state.
All gets very confusing, especially when Trump's defense team slips in reference to the pardon that we just saw. A lot to keep track of, and we really appreciate your analysis. Catherine Christian, thank you. And turning now to an NBC News exclusive about the man who is currently Trump's most controversial cabinet pick, Pete Hegseth. 10 current and former Fox News employees telling NBC News that Hegseth drank in ways that worried his co-workers, and some employees even saying he smelled like alcohol before going on air as recently as last month. Now, this coming as Hegseth was seen over at Capitol Hill for a second day today, trying to work the halls there, dodging questions, though, yet again about the allegations that have come to light.
You need to address the questions about your character you've been raised. So that article suggests you have an alcohol problem.
Okay,
problem with drinking.
See you guys.
All right, let's bring in NBC's Garrett Haake. You might have recognized his voice there, the man with all the questions, even though it did not sound like he got too many answers. Garrett, you've got some new reporting, though, about how senators have been feeling about all this drama. What are you hearing out there?
Yeah, Gadi, frankly, they don't love it. I mean, Hegseth was someone who caught a lot of senators off guard when he was first announced as Trump's pick to lead the Pentagon. Some didn't feel like his resume was really up to snuff for leading a bureaucracy with 3 million men and women stationed all over the globe. They were skeptical then, and there's been very little that's happened between then and now to change that feeling. We've got some reporting tonight that as many as 6 Republican senators, perhaps even more than that, are uncomfortable with the pick right now. Could be very hard to move off of no. Remember, the Senate that we're going to have next year, no Trump pick, assuming all Democrats oppose them, can afford to lose more than 3 Republicans. Not a big math guy, but 6 is a problem if they're all hard no's. And so at some point, Hegseth has got to start turning this around. The steady drip of stories has not helped. He hasn't really addressed these questions, as you saw from that montage of him ignoring what appear to be somewhat personal questions, but are important for someone who's going to be taking calls in the middle of the night about world-changing events. And so, at some point, Hegseth has to kind of turn this momentum the other direction, and we're just not seeing that yet.
And we know that President-elect Trump is watching all this play out, but has he or the team responded?
His team has responded with a statement, particularly on our reporting tonight about the alcohol question at Fox News, calling it false, saying it's disgusting, even defamatory reporting. But the man himself, the president-elect, has said very little about this, and I think that's very telling. If you're Hegseth or any one of these nominees, you need Trump and his social media megaphone out there backing you up. The absence of that, I think, it's always a hard thing to predict, but it's kind of the dog that didn't bark. And the idea that he and his team aren't, sort of leaning into this fight out vociferously defending Hegseth is the kind of thing that if I were on Hegseth's team, I'd be concerned about.
And Garrett, we also saw another Trump pick pull himself out of the running today, right? This one was over who was going to run the DEA?
Yeah, Chad Chronister, a county sheriff in Hillsborough County, Florida, who was a surprising pick to lead the DEA a week and a half ago now when he was announced, and a surprising end to his announcement, or to his tenure as the selection to lead that agency. Today, in a social media post that I'm told caught the transition by surprise, transition officials I spoke to learned about his announcement that he would no longer be seeking the post from that social media post here. This may have something to do with Chad Chronister's handling of various COVID-related issues back during the pandemic. There's been some reporting that he was somebody who enforced a lot of the COVID restrictions at a state and county level back during the pandemic. Obviously, there's been a huge backlash against those restrictions, particularly on the right. It's not clear whether the Trump transition knew about those enforcement issues or understood the depth of the backlash when his selection was announced. But whatever they knew then, they know now that he will not be the person they'll get across the finish line to lead the DEA. No word yet on who Mr. Trump's new selection will be for that role.
Yeah, a lot of surprises these days. Garrett Haake, thank you, brother.
You bet.
Meanwhile, even more snow is on the way for the Great Lakes, which means a whole lot of that impossibly heavy lake effect snow. The kind that has already buried this county in western New York under 4 feet. Some mounds of snow even taller than the correspondent we've got out there, NBC's Aaron McLaughlin, who we're going to get to in just a minute. All of that snow has caused roofs to cave in. It's forced the only high school in one Ohio city to shut down and move its students. And look at what happened when a driver got caught on some snowy tracks. A train smashing into a truck at a railroad crossing in Erie, Pennsylvania. Luckily, he was able to get out just in the nick of time. And Erie, Pennsylvania is where NBC's correspondent Aaron McLaughlin joins us now from. Hey, Aaron, how's it looking out there?
Hey there, Gadi. As you can see, it's still snowing here in Erie, Pennsylvania. And while it's not as heavy as what we saw unfold over the weekend, it's still nevertheless a big concern to officials in this county because of the weight of the snow already on rooftops, on structures across this area, showing signs of being compromised. Earlier today, we were at a car wash that had been completely destroyed, collapsing under the weight of the snow on its roof. We spoke to the neighbor across the street. She said that early this morning she heard a loud crack, looked outside the window, and saw the destruction. Take a listen.
We heard it. It was a loud bam. It scared my sister and it scared my son. It just kind of caved in with the snow and the ice building up on top of the roof.
A charter school in the area was also evacuated because the roof was showing signs of buckling. I was also talking to a county official who said that the warehouse that houses the snow plows and the graders was also showing signs of collapse. So this is a big concern, something they're monitoring going forward. There's still a state of emergency here in the county and elsewhere. They're pulling in resources from the tri-state area. They're also talking to officials for help as far away as Virginia as this storm continues, and there's another storm on the way on Thursday. Gadi.
Aaron McLaughlin, hope you're keeping your hand warmers close. Thank you. Let's head over to NBC News meteorologist Bill Cairns now. Bill, so round 2, is it going to be as bad as round 1?
No, but on top of 3 to 4 feet, another 1 to 2 feet, like where Aaron's located, that's not going to be pretty because we start to worry about the weight of the snow for any roofs that haven't been cleared because, you know, another 1 to 2 feet, you add it on top, and that's a lot of extra weight. So here's our big map for 12 million people that are going to be impacted. Now we're watching the snow coming down through northern Minnesota, the upper peninsula of Michigan, and then tomorrow it's going to race through the Great Lakes and into the Northeast. So you can see what we're looking at now. We have areas of blue that shows some snow. There's nothing that's coming down heavy and hard. This isn't like a big organized storm like a blizzard or a nor'easter. This is a fast-moving clipper storm that gets energized from the warmth of the Great Lakes. So this is by 8 p.m. tomorrow. This is everywhere in blue shows you where the snow is. You notice it's in streams of heavy bands of snow, more looking like lake effect. We do get some warm advection snow, we call it here, in areas of the Northeast. And this will be coming in mostly after the evening commute is all said and done. By the time we get to Thursday afternoon and evening, the storm's off the coast, but we still have that cold air coming off the lakes, and we will will see some significant bands of lake effect, and that's where we're going to get those 1 to 2 feet total. So here's our snowfall projection map. Areas in white, that's about an inch. So that's enough just to make things a little slippery. Shouldn't be in any problems for schools in those areas. But when you get to the blue, to 3 to 6 inches, so we're talking right along the lake shore here on the east side of Lake Michigan, anywhere south of Lake Erie, all the way all through areas outside of Pittsburgh. And then as we go through the higher elevations of Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, and also central New York, then you get these 2 big spots here with heavy snow. That's the lake effect snow. And besides all of this, Gadi, we also are going to see very windy conditions. Wind alerts are in effect on Thursday, so we will see some significant problems out there at the airports. And by the time we get through Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we start to warm things up. And Gadi, that's it. This looks like a wrap for our early winter. It looks pretty mild through the middle of December.
I love hearing people talk about warm snow, and you know immediately they're an Easterner.
That's right.
We've been talking a lot about how cold it's going to be on the East Coast, but I don't know if you're going to the tree lighting ceremony tomorrow. What's it going to look like then?
I will observe it for, maybe from afar, from, outside a window high up on our building somewhere. This forecast looks a million times better than our Macy's parade where it was cold and rainy. This looks like temperatures in 40s. So, that's kind of like gets you in the mood. We should have cloudy skies. It'd be a little breezy, so that just makes the lights kind of twinkle and everything. You could see a late sprinkle or flurry, but for the most part, Gadi, I think this is like an A+, considering that the Thanksgiving parade was like a D- forecast.
Yeah, even better for you since you're going to be looking down at it over the radiators that we have there, over the heaters at 30 Rock. Is perfect, primo.
And we'll have the TV on in the background. It's perfect. I'll have hot chocolate, but it'll be too warm to drink.
Can't wait. Bill Cairns, thank you.
All right.
And the jury is now deliberating in the case against Daniel Penny, the man charged with putting a subway rider in a deadly chokehold. Now, his defense has argued he was protecting others from an irate homeless man. Prosecutors argue he was too forceful and reckless. NBC News correspondent Emily Akeda has more.
Hey there, Gadi. Well, the fate of Daniel Penny is now in the hands of a dozen jurors, many of whom regularly ride the subway, and they have a lot to take into consideration. They have heard from dozens of different witnesses over the past month or so, including police officers, medical experts, loved ones of Daniel Penny, and of course, passengers aboard the train who have described Neely's erratic and irate actions when he boarded the train a year and a half ago. They talked about how he described that he didn't care if he died or went to jail. And that is something that in closing arguments, the assistant district attorney today acknowledged, though, quote, take a look here, said even though the defendant started out trying to do the right thing, as the chokehold progressed, the defendant knew that Jordan Neely was in great distress and dying, and he needlessly continued. Now, the defense contends that the medical examiner rushed to judgment in declaring that the chokehold was the cause of death. The defense saying that there could have been other things contributing, like Neely's medical history, background, and drug usage. He also said that Penny was acting to protect others, encouraging jurors to put themselves in the shoes of people that were aboard that train, asking the question, who would you want to be on the train alongside of you? Remember, this is a case that has deeply divided opinions, and we've seen those protests erupt since a year and a half ago when this incident had happened. It touches on a number of hot-button issues, including race relations, public safety, response to mental illness in the city. Now the case, again, is with the jurors. They will resume deliberations tomorrow morning. They are considering a number of charges. The top charge, manslaughter in the second degree. The second charge, criminally negligent homicide. That top charge could carry up to 15 years in prison if convicted. Gadi.
Okay, so many people are following. Emily Akeda, thank you. And don't go anywhere. We are just getting started. Up next, fighting back against porch pirates. Yep, those real-life Grinches. We're going to tell you how to keep deliveries safe this holiday season and why cameras just don't stop everyone. Plus, 2 kids trapped inside a burning home, the race to get them out alive. And later this hour, we're trying to untangle what experts say is one of the worst cyber attacks in U.S. history, the massive scope of the China-backed effort, what it means for national security.
We have to understand that the digital connectivity that we all rely on, that we benefit from economically, can also be used against us.
Hey, welcome back. Tips on how you can protect your deliveries during porch pirate season. That's coming up in just a moment. But first, here's some of the headlines we're watching tonight. We are learning more details about that stowaway who snuck aboard a Delta flight to Paris from New York. Now, a source familiar with what happened says she was put on a return flight on Saturday night, and the woman was questioned and detained in France. Days earlier, she managed to get through TSA ID checks. And toy maker Mattel's facing a new lawsuit over those Wicked-themed dolls. A South Carolina mom has filed a suit after the company accidentally put the link to a porn site on some of the boxes. The woman says Mattel hasn't offered refunds, and the company did recall the dolls last month and said that they were sorry. Now, the CDC says that McDonald's E. coli outbreak is over, and they say it was definitely those slivered onions that got people sick after eating McDonald's Quarter Pounders. One person ended up dying, and more than 100 people got sick. And investigators found 11 kids working in an Iowa meat processing plant. They're calling the conditions dangerous that they were working in because those kids were allegedly using corrosive cleaners and a bunch of other types of equipment. The children worked for a sanitation company on overnight shifts from 2019 until last year. And the Department of Labor fined that company, but they have not responded to NBC News' request for comment. And the FDA is recalling some hummus by Cedar's Mediterranean Foods. It was found to have potentially some sort of foreign object, and the voluntary recall is in 10 states involving the roasted red pepper hummus. The company hasn't returned NBC's request for comment. And now to the sex scandal Abercrombie & Fitch is facing. The romantic partner of the former CEO is out on bond tonight after pleading not guilty to federal sex trafficking and prostitution charges. His partner, Mike Jeffries, and another Abercrombie employee are all facing similar charges. And NBC News correspondent Stephen Romo has more.
Yeah, Gadi, that's right. Today, co-defendant Matthew Smith pleading not guilty to those federal charges. He was also granted bond, all in relation to those 15 counts of interstate prostitution and 1 count of sex trafficking. And his romantic partner, former Abercrombie & Fitch CEO Mike Jeffries, along with their employee James Jacobson, facing those same charges as well. Now, they're accused of luring would-be models to these so-called sex events, which took place in the U.S. and overseas. Prosecutors say the defendants used force, fraud, and coercion to get those victims to attend these events, the youngest allegedly just 19 years old. Now, Smith is set to return to Florida, where he was arrested back in November, held part of that time in the New York City area, and then he faced a judge today on those that initial appearance, his arraignment held today. He is a UK citizen, and his passport ended up being seized. His travel is also restricted now that he is out on bond. His next court date is set for December 10th, and with all 3 defendants now entering those not guilty pleas, things will move forward with their trial. And all this getting so much attention, Gadi, as you know, in part because the brand was just everywhere in the 90s and early 2000s. There's also a documentary on Netflix called White Hot, The Rise and Fall of Abercrombie & Fitch, talking about other allegations. This brand was accused back in the late 90s, early 2000s of selling sex. And now that these 3 defendants are accused in these literal sex crimes, it's just getting all the more attention on this case. Gadi?
Stephen Romo, thank you. All right, so with record Black Friday and Cyber Monday sales, right now a lot of people are wondering whether their packages are actually going to make it safely to their doors, because it's not just the holiday season, it is also porch pirate season. And NBC's senior business correspondent Christine Roman shows us how theft insurance for deliveries is also on the rise.
So you filled up your online cart, you nabbed your Black Friday or Cyber Monday deal, and now all that's left is for your package to arrive. But some never will.
Porch pirates, stealing your deliveries right at your front door. Last year, 120.5 million packages swiped, estimates the security firm Safewise. Professor Ben Stickle studies this growing crime.
The volume of things that we're having delivered and the value of those things has just skyrocketed, and with that comes more theft.
Often, retailers will simply replace or refund a stolen item, but they don't have to.
And at what point is the consumer responsible for that package?
So who's responsible for package theft? really changes a lot. In most states, once a package is delivered by a carrier on your property, it's considered yours.
This holiday season, a scramble to stay ahead. Amazon Prime members can have their packages delivered into their garage or a locker. UPS using AI to reroute at-risk shipments to a UPS store. And doorbell cameras, never more popular. But those cameras don't always stop thieves. And according to one survey, 25% of people who had a package stolen received no refund. Now, new types of insurance will cover stolen packages, like Porch Pals. For $120 a year, it covers up to 3 claims, $2,000 total. Its founder, James Moore.
Just order away. And then when it's delivered to your porch, don't worry about it being stolen. Don't worry about any of that. If it gets stolen, we just replace the value of that package.
And experts say to keep packages safe, track your delivery, require a signature, or pick up from the store, rather than pile up the boxes on the porch.
Experts tell us these porch pirates are almost hunting for packages. They're looking for particular brands on the box. They're even looking for lithium-ion stickers that suggest valuable electronics might be inside that box. And package thefts can happen anywhere. The Chamber of Commerce says, according to package theft victims, they mostly live in suburban or urban areas. About 14% live in rural areas. So watch out as those Black Friday and Cyber Monday packages start to roll in. And if you can, try to be at home when they arrive. That way you can scoop them up before someone else gets to them. Back to you.
Christine Romans, thank you. And coming up, a few words you never want to hear said together. A surprise from space. What we know about an asteroid spotted over Russia. That's coming up in tonight's Future of Everything. But first, you got to see this. So the White House might have been showing off like 83 Christmas trees this year, but it's got nothing on the Eurmin family in Germany. They just set a world record by decking out their house with over 600 Christmas trees. Look at that. I mean, the holiday spirit. That's right. 605 trees to be exact. Oh, like 100,000 ornaments as well. The trees, like, they are everywhere in that house. They are even, yes, in the bathroom. And it turns out this is like not their first rodeo. They've broken the world record 6 times before. Real holiday pros. I mean, I want to go there so bad. We'll be right back. Hey, welcome back. Let's take a quick look around the world. One of the FBI's most wanted terrorists appeared in a London court this morning. 46-year-old Daniel Andreas Sandiego has been wanted by the feds for over 20 years after allegedly bombing 2 buildings in California way back in 2003. Now, this was a quick hearing. It lasted only about 2 minutes, with the suspect only saying his name and his birthday, but his next court appearance is scheduled for New Year's Eve. And Israel and Hezbollah are testing the limits of that ceasefire deal they recently agreed to. Yesterday, Israel fired a bunch of airstrikes across Lebanon that killed 11 people, and that came after Hezbollah fired a number of projectiles, calling it a warning over what they say have been Israeli violations of the ceasefire agreement. Meanwhile, severe flooding has killed at least 30 people across Malaysia and southern Thailand, and that's left tens of thousands of people without a place to live. Both countries are now scrambling to prepare shelters and evacuation plans as more heavy rain is expected. And 3 men, 2 from America and 1 from Canada, have gone missing while climbing New Zealand's highest peak. They started their ascent over the weekend and they were reported missing yesterday. Police say several climbing-related things have been found that they think belong to those men, but there's no sign of them so far. Rescue efforts were cut short today because of bad weather, and operations aren't likely to pick back up until conditions improve, which could look like Thursday. And health officials are now investigating a mystery disease in southwest Congo. 143 people have died in just 2 weeks, and women and children have been the most seriously affected so far. And the number of infected people continues to climb today. Here to hopefully shed some light on the situation is NBC medical fellow Dr. Akshay Syal. Dr. Syal, so authorities seem to be describing this as like flu-like symptoms. What do we know about what's going on there?
So, Gadi, I think the most important thing for people to realize is this is still a novel sort of situation. We don't know what's exactly is going on, and we're still sort of learning more, you know, every hour and every day. But what we do know so far is that there is about 143 people, or up to 143 people, who have passed away from this mysterious disease that doctors on the ground really haven't been able to figure out. So the WHO, or the World Health Organization, has actually dispatched a team down there. And I've spoken to some researchers who are going to be headed to Africa this week to really find out about what could be going on. And you can see some of the symptoms on your screen there: fever, severe headache, cough, and anemia, which is a problem with your blood cells. Really non-specific. They could be a whole host of things. I've talked to 3 or 4 doctors about what this could be, and I've gotten, 7 or 8 different responses. Really, we don't know, but the most important thing is the team is on the ground now.
We don't know, and I hate to be the guy that brings this up, but it's been 5 years now since COVID was first detected. And, when you hear mystery illness popping up, all of a sudden you're like, wait, hold on. Is this something that all of us should be concerned with? Or is this something that is an isolated incident, happens from time to time, and we've seen it before? What does your hunch tell you about this case?
No, it's a great point. So 5 years ago, December 2019, is when we really started to see some of those headlines pop up, right? The mystery disease in China that was affecting so many people. So I think that's a lot of the reason why there's some angst around this. But I think the most important thing really to point out is just because something is a mystery or unknown, it doesn't mean that it's novel or new. It could just be that whatever is going on, we haven't been able to successfully identify it. I talked to Dr. Anne Ramoyne here at UCLA. She's worked in the DRC for 22 years. She has a research team on the ground, and she said this could be, for example, something like typhoid, something that we can easily test for and treat. But it's just, we need to learn a little bit more, and that's why the team is being sent to the ground to help out in the area.
And Congo, they're also dealing with mpox still, right?
Yeah, so that area, the DRC, has seen about almost, I think, 47,000 cases of mpox this year and about 1,000 deaths so far. So really the reason that's so important, Gadi, is we worry about the stress on the healthcare system. If there's 2 outbreaks simultaneously going on, especially in a resource stripped areas, an area that is not so resource rich as here in the United States, we worry that could overwhelm not just doctors and hospitals, but really all the surrounding community. So that's why there's a lot of, you see, sort of getting ahead of this with the WHO dispatching a team so quickly. And we'll wait to learn more from the team.
Yeah, hoping for more data soon. Dr. Akshay Syal, thank you.
Yeah.
And over in Chicago, a heartwarming scene at O'Hare Airport on Monday. A massive crowd there welcomed a group of kids from Gaza to their city. Those kids arriving as part of the largest medical evacuation of children from that war zone. From our affiliate in Chicago, Natalie Martinez has more.
Fresh off a 12-hour flight, these Palestinian survivors are part of the largest medical evacuation of kids from Gaza. They're here in Chicago thanks to the Palestinian Children's Relief Fund Monday night.
Aside from the physical damage that they have, that they need to receive that medical treatment for, they also have the cultural difference that they have to be accustomed to, as well the PTSD and the mental help that they need.
Tonight, 8 kids and a family member each come for life-saving surgeries and medical equipment at Shriners hospitals in the U.S.
This is a drop in the ocean. There are thousands and thousands of children that need medical care, and there needs to be a better system to allow us to take these children out.
Some have waited months, some for over a year.
Where I was told by his mother that she saw her own daughter get killed in front of her. And then her youngest son saw this incident occur in front of him, and now he's mute, cannot say a single word. And she had to leave him behind to bring these 2 children to receive the medical treatment.
This is him right here, on cue. Say hi, dude.
Little Jude's host dad is a UFC champion, but this little guy wants to be a policeman. He and his dad have been here with Bilal Muhammad's family since March and came to welcome the new children at O'Hare's Terminal 5.
Seeing him now, he got the right medical care that he needed. It's the least we could do, right?
Bilal, like so many others here, says he hopes to help more.
This is the life a kid should have. This is the life that they should be living. Every kid should be experiencing this.
This is the life that the kids should have. Before we go, it is time for the future of everything. The hack of some of the biggest names in U.S. communications is getting bigger. The new warning that experts say all Americans need to be thinking about. Plus, a sort of test run for something major crashing down from space. You heard us right. How our early detection system is working. And are we ready for the big one? Stay tuned. And tonight on The Future of Everything, a massive hacking operation that keeps getting bigger. U.S. officials say this is connected to China, and it's impacting almost all the major American communication companies that we all use every single day. NBC's Hallie Jackson explains.
New details tonight on what's being called one of the worst cyber hacks in history, with federal officials revealing they've been investigating China for months after hackers compromised the networks of multiple U.S. communications companies and may still be lurking in the systems of at least some of them. FBI and federal cybersecurity officials say these Chinese government-affiliated hackers managed to steal records, intercept some voice calls, even penetrate the wiretap system used by the Justice Department to investigate people suspected of crimes or spying. Officials say most of the private communication intercepted by the hackers involved people affiliated with the government or politics, but the access to companies like Verizon and AT&T means the communications of nearly every American are vulnerable. And now a new warning to be careful what you communicate and use encrypted communication when you can. Think Signal, WhatsApp, or iMessage. Those blue text bubbles a sign what you're saying is protected. Is a warning like that overkill, in your view?
I think it's a good standard hygiene practice for operating in today's modern technology environment. You have to be really mindful, again, about the technology you're using, how it's secured.
The culprits, officials say, a group called Salt Typhoon, the same collective allegedly behind the hacks of the Trump and Harris campaigns before the election. Officials even now still trying to understand the scale, scope, and timeline of this hack.
We have to understand that the digital connectivity that we all rely on, that we benefit from economically, can also be used against us.
For its part, China has denied past hacking accusations and last month accused the U.S. of trying to spread disinformation, despite what U.S. officials see as a clear connection. Gadi?
Hallie Jackson, thank you. And finally tonight, do you remember the movie Don't Look Up? Well, fortunately, a lot of scientists are looking up. They're looking up all the time. And yesterday, our early warning, something's about to hit us system seems to have kind of worked. Check this out.
Вау! Все, что ли? Все? Вау! Нифига себе! Сереж, видишь? Сережа, вон. Вижу.
Whoa. Oh, that fireball over Siberia. Yeah, we saw it coming, not by a long time, only by like 10 hours of a heads up, but there was a warning. And fortunately, it was just a little guy. It was a small asteroid about the size of a basketball burning up in Earth's atmosphere. And thanks to better tech, we are now spotting a lot more of these, which is great because they call the really big ones civilization ending, and even the smaller ones, like the size of a house. Well, in 2013, one of those came down and blew up over Russia, and over 1,000 people were hurt.
Fire in the sky. A massive meteor crashes to Earth. 1,000 people injured.
Exploding with the force of an atomic bomb.
And joining us now is Davide Farnochia. He is a navigation engineer at NASA's JPL. Thanks so much for joining us. First off, on behalf of, I don't know, all of humanity, thank you so much for looking out for us. Tell us about this one that we just saw.
Well, this was an interesting one. It was discovered last night by University of Arizona's Buck telescope on Kitt Peak. And shortly after it was discovered, by crunching the numbers and processing the data, it became clear this object was in fact on an impact trajectory. So I got text messages and phone calls in the middle of the night to see what was happening. And by looking at the results of our orbit calculations, it became clear this object was going to hit, but at the same time, it was a small one. So it's one of these objects that reach the Earth on a regular basis. They happen a few times a year. This is the fourth one in 2024. But the interesting thing when we get these small ones that are not going to cause any damage, they break up in the atmosphere, is really the possibility to test the system, make sure that we can compute all the numbers, predict the impact location, and confirm those predictions with these pretty spectacular videos that you're showing.
Yeah, confirm location and also be able to collect data right near where something like that is coming down. It's very exciting to see all this coming together. And yet, the way that you described it, the text messages coming at the end of the night, like I always imagine there's a control, like an Earth control center, right? And all of a sudden it's like, sure, we have an asteroid coming. That does not at all sound like what you described. It sounds kind of like a collective of a bunch of scientists all over the place, like texting each other and waking each other up. Is that about accurate?
Well, pretty much. In this case, you have astronomers that are obviously up at night because you can only observe the night sky in the middle of the night. And then there are people doing the orbital calculations who usually, work during the daytime. But we have colleagues all over the world. And so if it's nighttime here, there's going to be European colleagues that can notify us. But the important thing is that since we cannot really be available 24/7, we have a completely automated process to fetch these data, process them, and issue alerts as needed to make sure we are notified when something of interest happens, like last night.
Yeah, I cannot think of a more important night shift. And I know that the first imminent detector goes back to like 2008. How has the technology changed over the years, and how much more advanced and much more of a warning do you think we're going to see in the next coming years?
So there is, let's say, in terms of being able to recognize them as soon as possible, once they're observed, we're much faster than we used to be. In 2008, it took several hours to recognize that this object was on an impact trajectory. Now we have a system that is fully automated called Scout that actually notifies us very quickly. It takes minutes to process the data and let us know. We've been able to do this kind of calculations when we had only a couple hours, not 10 hours like the one from last night. And also we have telescopes that are getting better and better at detecting objects that are fainter. And so we can expect to see more of these objects. And this is going to be even more true with the NASA Enio Surveyor mission and the Vera Rubin Observatory that are going to come online in the next few years. So we're bracing and being excited for that.
Very excited. And again, this is only one part of the equation. We've got this early warning detection thing that's getting a lot better. But how are things going with the whole, like, blast them off of a crash course or intercept them in space? That tech, we've seen the DART mission. We're definitely going to need that at some point in our future, right? So what's the tech looking like on that side of things?
Well, so as you said, we want to be able to prevent objects that might be larger than could cause more damage. And so the first step is to discover these objects as early as possible and allow enough time to deflect them off course. And so there's different approaches. One of them, and probably the best tested so far, is that of a kinetic impactor. You essentially send a very fast spacecraft that smashes into the asteroid, changes the velocity by just the right amount to move it off course. And that's what we tested with the DART mission, which was a spectacular success in terms of being able to demonstrate you can actually target and hit something of that size.
Davide, once again, on behalf of all of us here on planet Earth, thank you so much for the work that you're doing.
Well, you're welcome. It's also a lot of fun, so I like doing that.
That's a plus side all around. Thank you so much. That's going to do it for us tonight. I'm Gadi Schwartz. We'll see you here tomorrow. But until then, stay tuned now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.